he is a fascist. He is a pound shop Ayatollah. He is a wannabe dictator. He is a disgusting, depraved, amoral man doing disgusting, depraved and amoral things. And once you stop hoping that he isn't, everything gets clearer and easier to process. There's a word of advice for you there. And that is profoundly relevant to the question that I'm asking you. Because there is a but. I like big buts. I cannot lie. He is a disgusting, depraved, amoral man, but he is Iran's only chance. He's the Obi-Wan Kenobi for the Iranian people. And therefore, do you have to park your obvious and well-founded objections to the depravity, the amorality, the killing, the lying, because he is your only hope? Hands up if you think it is absolutely ridiculous to worry that Donald Trump would happily start World War III if it was going to distract attention from anything from the ICE operatives who were murdering and Border Patrol operatives who were murdering citizens on the streets of Minneapolis, right through to the Epstein files, 2 million pages of which are yet, despite his promises and indeed the demands made of the Department of Justice, that are yet to be released. What do you think Donald Trump wouldn't do to stop proper scrutiny of his goon squad and or the release of the Epstein files? Hands up if you think he would balk at the idea of war. Maybe not world war, it's a slightly overused phrase, but would he actually start a war to distract attention from his own moral depravity? Yes or no? Come on, there must be one no. There must be one person who thinks Donald Trump wouldn't start a war to distract attention from his own moral depravity and murderous regime. No, apparently not. So that is point number one. We are doing that thing that we don't know how not to do. Don't talk about the thing that he's announcing just to distract attention from the thing that he was doing yesterday, to distract attention from the thing that he was doing on Tuesday. I'm not even exaggerating this week, am I? But if it is the potential attack on a Middle Eastern power widely, certainly a Middle Eastern power with nuclear ambitions, then you can't ignore it. This is the stuff that's so frustrating. Oh, it's just a dead cat, James. I don't know why you're talking about this. I mean, crikey, he just doesn't want you to talk. I'm not having a go at you for sending me these messages. I did at the beginning of last week, but I've changed my mind about that now. It's a perfectly reasonable response, but you can't not do it. Do you see what I mean? You possibly could not talk about some publicity stunt that he's undertaken. Maybe don't talk about knocking down the West Wing, or the East Wing, sorry, in order to distract attention from Epstein. But you can't not talk about him launching an armada that is currently heading towards Iran, moving quickly towards the country with what he has described as great power, enthusiasm and purpose. So it doesn't matter how enormous a dead cat it may be, there is a level of enormity that cannot be ignored. However clever you think you are, however brilliant, however fearful you might be of what this represents and what this means, you can't ignore it. Hopefully Iran will quickly come to the table and negotiate a fair and equitable deal. No nuclear weapons in capital letters. I'm old enough to remember when he was doing a lap of honour for having eradicated all of Iran's nuclear capabilities for generations. Or did I dream that? Did I dream the bit where Donald Trump launched a military attack upon Iran's nuclear facilities and claimed that they'd been absolutely annihilated? So why on earth would they need to come to the table and do a fair and equitable deal that would remove all nuclear weapons from their arsenal? As I once told Iran before, make a deal in capital letters. They didn't, and there was, quotes, Operation Midnight Hammer. There you go, I didn't dream it. A major destruction of Iran, but apparently not as destructive as he originally claimed, because he also writes the next attack will be far worse. Don't make that happen again. So, I mean, crikey, this has happened quickly, hasn't it? And it is clearly not a coincidence that it's happened in a week where support for his regime is at its lowest, and dissatisfaction and unhappiness with the death squad marching around Minneapolis killing people at will is reaching fever pitch. Don't look at Minneapolis, look at Tehran. Donald Trump is shouting at the very top of his voice. I'm not going to labour this point, but I do want it to be front and centre. You can't not do it. Just because it is a morally depraved monster who is shouting, don't look at Minneapolis, look at Tehran, doesn't mean that looking at Tehran becomes the wrong thing to do. How can you not look at Tehran? on a morning like this. Every time I talk to you about dystopian, every time I mention anything from 1984 to The Handmaid's Tale to the Hunger Games, all of that is in Iran and worse. Just because people can lead relatively civilized lives because they are not upsetting the regime or they're not coming to the attention of the regime does not in any way dilute the reality of the horror. Every dystopia contains outwardly happy people. Every totalitarian society has got people who are on the right side of the madness for now. I'm going to have to stop saying to you, I think of Henry VIII often. But I think of Henry VIII often because you are winning. You've just built Hampton Court. You're absolutely laughing in the court of a mad king until you have to give him your house and you get your head chopped off. So there are always people who are, for now, benefiting from the status quo, even if the status quo is utterly corrupt. And that doesn't change the fact that the Iranian regime is as hideous as regimes get. Have we established that now sufficiently? That it is an objective fact that the Iranian regime is absolutely hideous. All the things that liberals detest, all the things that supporters of democracies detest, all the things that believers in human rights and basic humanitarianism absolutely detest, all the things that good people should be prepared to go to war for are on the ground in Iran. But how do you end up thinking Donald Trump is the man to deliver righteousness, goodness, deliverance? That's the thing. How big a factor is Donald Trump being Donald Trump in your answer to the question of whether or not the United States should attack Iran? In his words, in a far worse way than it did last time. And again, I mean, all the things I feel that I need to keep hitting you with are going to run through this hour like a Blackpool through a stick of rock. Of course it's a dead cat. Of course he wouldn't be doing this if the situation on the ground in the United States was better. I don't think the Armada would be heading towards Tehran if Alex Pretti hadn't been murdered this weekend. Does that even sound controversial to you? Does it sound like an original thought? If Alex Pretti hadn't been murdered this weekend, Trump's Armada would not currently be heading towards Iran. I put half my house on that. You never know. It's counterfactual. You can never prove it. So there it is. You know, that is a fact. Well, it's as close to a fact as an opinion can get. Number two, the Iranian regime is objectively disgusting. It is 100 paces, it is 100 miles further down the road towards fascist dictatorship than Donald Trump is, and hopefully will ever be, but I wouldn't put half my house on that. Keep an eye on the midterms. And there is only really one power on the planet possessed of sufficient heft and will, because neither China nor Russia are likely to tread on the Mullahs' toes, the Ayatollah's toes anytime soon. There is only really one power on the planet that has the will or the wherewithal to tread on the Ayatollah's toes. And that power is the United States of America. So how do you juggle these things? How do you juggle these things? Iranian people begging for America's help, and America and Trump in contexts like this are synonymous. But Trump is a morally depraved monster. I mean, it's not to trivialise the plight of the Iranian people, but you know the old line about Mussolini got the trains to run on time. It was the sort of last redoubt, I think, of the apologist. The fact that the apologist for fascism, yeah, all right, you know, loads of people got murdered, but at least he got the trains to run on time. You're sort of looking for yeah, all right, Donald Trump is all of the things his critics have been warning about for years, but at least he's on the right side of history when it comes to attacking the Ayatollahs. And yet, are the Ayatollahs objectively worse in any way than Vladimir Putin, who he cozies up? Do you see what I mean about the impossibility of an ethical foreign policy in this case? I remember when people said to me, should we be taking Saddam Hussein off the board? Because look at these terrible dictators over there. Why aren't we doing anything about them? And I was dismissive. I mean, I wasn't even doing this for a living at the time, so I'm not going to be too hard on myself. I think I was still a showbiz journalist. So quite why anyone was asking me about the prospect of getting Saddam Hussein taken. No, I think I was just in the foothills of doing this kind of stuff for a living on daytime television. And my logic then was, if you've got 10 murderous dictators lined up against the wall and you've only got one bullet, you use it. And it means 9 walk free. But if Donald Trump is going to get on his high horse about Iran while simultaneously ticking the toes of Vladimir Putin, what does that do? You lob that rock into the pond of world, quotes, peace, end quotes. Where do the ripples end? Vladimir Putin is a war criminal. Benjamin Netanyahu is the architect of a genocide. And he's on Donald Trump's board of peace. But he's the guy that can go into Iran and sort out the Ayatollahs. And I think part of the reason I'm so tortured this morning intellectually, because I've got no skin in the game, is because I think he should. I don't know how else you rescue the people of Iran. But almost every time you've had these thoughts about foreign regimes, even when you didn't have a madman in the White House, it's ended badly. Of course the United States should go into Afghanistan. Of course it should. Of course the United States should topple Saddam Hussein. I think most people recognise that at the very least the way in which it was done was a terrible mistake, even if they can still sustain the belief that the original ambition to topple Saddam Hussein was sound and solid. The way it was done was disastrous. Ditto the Taliban, who are, spoiler alert, still in power in Kabul, despite a 20-year engagement which saw 457 members of British military personnel killed. Something later denigrated and derided by Donald Trump, which Nigel Farage elected to describe as not quite fair. These people are hideous. But they are not as hideous as the Ayatollahs. So do we do that? Do we support a Donald Trump-led attack on Iran or not? Given all the factors that I've just shared with you. You see why it's philosophically fascinating, and you see why I began this introduction by describing a weird and vague sense of guilt about finding it so fascinating, when it's the lives of Iranians that are in the balance, and potentially, depending on what kind of attack Donald Trump chooses to describe as far worse than the last one, it could be US lives on the line as well. He urges them to keep protesting, despite the fact that they could get killed, which again draws your mind back to Minneapolis. He promises them that help is on its way, but then backtracks on the grounds that the killing has stopped. And then he comes back again because I think everyone would have to agree, unless they were so bent that they can't lie straight in bed at night, the situation at home is so bad, he needs to start a war, or he needs to sound as if he's about to start a war. Activists say 30,000 people have been killed during the recent unrest. And that's why the parallels with Minneapolis are only intellectually valid. There's no comparison between 2 murders and 30,000 murders, except in principle, in essence, in moral. It's the quality of mercy, not the quantity. But how does any of this square with the fact that Donald Trump would sell his grandmother for a mess of pottage? Donald Trump would absolutely shoot someone on Fifth Avenue if he thought it would enhance his electoral. He'd demand that governors lie. He is utterly, utterly corrupt. And his regime is killing people on the streets of his cities. But he's still the only guy that can go into Iran and do anything about it. So that's it. There you go.